everyone. Welcome to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, March 16th. And our first item on our agenda today is the preparation for the elected officials transportation committee meeting, which will be held on Thursday, March 25th. And to lead us through that presentation, we have our Transportation Administrator, Dave Pesnicek, here with us today. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
So nice to have you here.
Thank you. Let's see. Get my screen sharing going here. All right, it looks like this is coming through okay. So this is a preparation meeting for the March 25th EOTC meeting. This is coming up next Thursday and will be hosted by the Town of Snowmass Village within their council chambers. Do you need that?
And Dave, just a quick, for me, housekeeping item. Is there a virtual option for that meeting?
There will be. So this will be both an in-person and a virtual meeting. So we have the capacity to do up to 9 EOTC members in person. We do currently have 4 of the Town of Snowmass members so that they will be attending in person. So we currently have 5 available spaces if you do wish to attend in person. But it will be virtual, and I will be sending out those links the first part of next week to everybody, whether you're coming virtual or not. So I did want to check in with everybody before going further, just to get a tally of who's planning on attending in person, who's planning on attending virtually, or if you're not going to be there at all, just get that tallied out now.
Okay, Patty.
I will be on the road from 4 to 6 on my way to Denver. So I've already talked to Dave about getting any of my comments or concerns to him prior to the meeting.
Okay. Any other commissioners planning to not attend next Thursday's EOTC meeting? Francie?
Planning to attend. I'm planning to attend in person just so I can meet some people. But if it's a blizzard, I'll probably change my mind.
Fair.
I might too.
Steve and Greg, will you guys plan to join either virtually or in person?
Well, I will be joining one way or the other. I hadn't realized there was an in-person option, so I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
Ditto for me. I'll certainly be there one way or the other.
Okay. And I plan to participate virtually.
Virtual, okay.
What is the location in Snowmass?
It will be within the city, or Town of Snowmass Village Council Chambers, so at Town Hall. If you could, Steve and Greg, if you do have a chance to solidify that, if you can let me know. I am meeting with the City of Aspen Council next Monday, so just so I can have a solid count by that point, so I can let them know how many spaces are available. I'd appreciate that.
Greg?
Dave, Greg here. I'll plan on attending in person.
Okay.
If you have too many people, you can bump me off because I'm just as happy to do it virtually.
Okay, appreciate that. All
Well,
right.
likewise, David, I could do it in person. If they have a burning desire to be there in person, I'm fine staying at home too.
Okay. Well, I will plan on 3 Board of County Commissioners being there in person. Then we've got the 4 Town of Snowmass Village Councilors, which leaves a couple spaces open for City of Aspen if they're interested.
And so you guys know there's a really good new restaurant right down the street next to Tasters. It has indoor and outdoor dining, so afterwards you could stay in Snowmass and spend a little tax dollars there.
What's the name of it?
It's called the Daily Diner. Cute.
All right, well, looking at the agenda for this afternoon, outside basic logistics, as we do at prep meetings, I'd like to receive any comments you might have on the EOTC decisions reached from the last EOTC meeting. I'll then go through an overview of the EOTC action items. We've got one coming up here on March 25th, which is an update to the EOTC IGA, and then take any questions or comments you might have on the updated items, which are information only. So to start off, don't want to go through the decisions reached line by line, but we did have 2 primary decisions this last October 29th, and that was adoption of the 2021-2022 EOTC work plan, as well as the 2021 EOTC budget. And if I can take any comments now if you've had a chance to read through those, and if you haven't, feel free to email those to me. But I'll pause here to just see if there are any comments or corrections that you might have on those.
I just want
Patty?
to say that the message sign, the dynamic messaging sign is great. Thank you for all your effort that went into getting that finally installed and up and running. For people to be noticed that the parking lots are full or that there's parking available, I think is great. And any other emergent type issues that we have there that can be posted up there, I think it's a great location. And it doesn't seem to block much of anything, no view plane, no. So I'm really glad to see that was completed. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's good feedback to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, any other input for Dave on the work plan or the budget? Okay. Steve?
All right. Well, moving into the action item coming up for March 25th is just a short overview here. The EOTC IGA, as you may recall, the impetus for updating this came from the 2019 EOTC retreat, and the general direction there was to update the EOTC governance as well as clarify EOTC decision making. And so the proposal that you have in front of you does build off of the work that we did last year, including the adoption of the 2020 strategic plan and the 2020 comprehensive valley transportation plan update. The EOTC, as you may recall, its organization stems from three primary documents. One is the 1993 IGA, which is the primary document that organizes it. There's also two other resolutions, Resolution 61, which was adopted the 1993 CVTP, as well as the Resolution 62, which identified projects to be funded by the 1993 transportation revenue bonds. All of these three documents, even though they were adopted individually, they are all interdependent on one another. So they more or less act as one cohesive group currently. They were also all adopted, I think it's important to keep in mind, before the half-cent transit sales and use tax was passed by the voters in 1993. So the language in them is speculative, looking at if the tax passes, we will do X, and if it doesn't pass, we will do Y, and really trying to push that envelope of the comprehensive valley transportation plan and that sort of regional thinking. The three goals in the update, the first one was to update the language and terminology. As I mentioned, it is pretty out of date and was adopted before the tax was passed. The second was to simplify the IGA and associated resolutions 61 and 62 into one IGA document. So adopting them separately, I think, made sense back in 1993 as it was building toward the passage of the tax. 28 years down the line, I don't think it makes sense to maintain them as three separate documents, and it's fairly clunky trying to do so at this point. So the second goal is to try to simplify those documents and merge them all into one. And then the third goal, which was the outcome of the retreat, was to clarify the governance and decision-making processes and try to streamline those for the EOTC going forward. So that all led, so with the feedback from the retreat, and what we learned last year with the adoption of the strategic plan and CVTP, and then looking at those goals in terms of updating the IGA and governance structure, we landed on four primary governance and decision-making changes to the IGA. The first one's pretty straightforward, is identifying the organizational structure and committee name. So this wasn't very explicitly laid out in the 1993 IGA, stating that the committee is made up of the 5 elected officials from each of the different jurisdictions. So made that more explicit. The EOTC also wasn't known as the EOTC at that time. It was just the committee that was going to come together and decide how to spend those funds. So over time, it became known as the EOTC, and that has also been built into the IGA document. The meat of the changes, though, is this number 2, is that the EOTC is to hold special meetings. And by holding special meetings where each jurisdiction notices them as a public hearing, we can then have votes at the EOTC meeting that are final. And what that means is that we don't need to have those follow-up meetings where I come back and you all vote again, and then we are able to sign the resolution. So that this allows us to essentially eliminate that step and streamline the process. I think that process also created some confusion in terms of the overall, why are we coming back and what's the process, and So this is intended to make it more intuitive as well. The third is clarifying the decision-making processes. So the IGA breaks it down into 4 possible decisions that the EOTC can make, including the CVTP adoption, budget and expenditures, plans, and then administrative direction, and states what those processes are for each of those decisions that the EOTC could make. And then the fourth one here is identifying a quorum, and this stems back to number 2. If we are going to have special meetings where the decisions are final, we do need to make sure that we have a quorum at each of the meetings in order to allow those votes to be legitimate. So the proposed IGA does state that the quorum in this case would be a majority of each of the boards. So each of the boards are 5 members, so that would require 3 members to be present at each of the meetings in order to for that meeting to continue and a vote to occur. So on the virtual meeting piece, I think it's important here to note that we do intend to keep the virtual component. I think it's proven over the last year to be a success, particularly in the EOTC setting where it is a very large committee, and trying to make sure that we do have enough people there to have a valuable conversation and, in this case, to have a quorum so that we can come to a final vote and decision at that meeting. So those are the 4 primary changes that you'll see when you review the IGA. And before getting into the update items, wanted to pause again and just see if you had any questions on this IGA.
Steve and then Patty?
So, David, if one of the boards can't make up their mind, they feel like they need to continue their decision, would they be allowed to vote to continue the item to another meeting and then get more information?
So
that's kind of defeating the purpose, but that I could see that happening in some instances. Yeah,
certainly that could occur, and that could occur today as well. And so the IGA, as it's laid out now, doesn't say that the EOTC needs to make necessarily an affirmative or not affirmative decision at the meeting. I think a continuance decision is certainly a valid decision. You know, we need more information, or something else needs to be done before a decision can be made. So I think that is still a possibility with what's proposed here.
Patty?
Well, yeah, just in light of what Steve just said, but there's a time frame issue because we don't have meetings but quarterly. So if somebody continues, we have to be really careful looking at what the timeliness of that is. So if it's a decision that needs to be made quickly, we need to have a way in which that can be done rather than wait for 3 months.
And that was an issue that came up as we were going through this. And you might notice, I'll go through this on the 25th too. Okay. I just didn't have it in the overview. One of the I guess backup plans that we have built in there is if the EOTC schedule gets messed up for some reason, this happened last year due to COVID, or if we do have a decision that needs to be made in a timely fashion, we do have the ability, so I can still go around to each of the jurisdictions and give a presentation and take a vote at each of the jurisdictions separately if we're not able to convene as a full group. So that's kind of the backup plan if we're not able to meet and there's some reason why we need to keep something moving.
I think that's important so we just don't drag things out. But my other question was, and this is more a technology question since we have technology in the room here with us today, and it was a concern for me here when we come back to having in-person meetings, but we have people Zoom and we still have grassroots. We need to make sure that that's worked out with grassroots and with who's ever running the Zoom meeting, because we have different cameras and different mics. Mm-hmm. So we need to make sure that we can accommodate that in be it at City of Aspen, be it in this room, or be it at Snowmass Village Town Hall. Mm-hmm. So that's something we're going to need to work closely with, and we're going to have to set up the process here for our just regular meetings that we have. So I just wanted to give you a heads up because I've already been questioning how we're going to do that in the future, hopefully sooner than later. So.
Yeah, and I anticipate there will continue to be some learning curves with the virtual components, but we do, at least for me and what I've spoken with the other EOTC staff about, is that I think it's something that needs to continue, and we're going to need to continue to work through those kinks and figure out how to make it work as smoothly as possible. Because
the public really likes to be able to join us for public comment by how whatever all their other virtual means too. So it's gonna be a huge technology challenge to figure all this out. So the sooner we start thinking about it, probably the better.
Other comments? Greg?
I just was wondering if, I'm trying to remember if we've ever called a special meeting of the EOTC, and is that's an option that's still open to us if, for instance, we can't get a quorum for a regular meeting. But it sounds like you've got a workaround already. Just wondering if a special meeting, rescheduling a special meeting is always an option.
So we always have the ability to convene, at a time that's not otherwise planned, if we need to and we're able to. It sounds like there could be some confusion here with the term special meeting, and that is really the use of each of the jurisdictions meeting and it being a notice public hearing. So there's the standard public notice that would go out as if you were meeting in this room by yourself, and that allows you to be able to make that final decision. So that, I think, is different than, say, just a separate special meeting that's otherwise not scheduled by the EOTC, which we can also have.
And then I do have a question, sort of related to what you just said. So all three of our boards will individually notice special meetings for the purpose of the EOTC getting together. Will, on the action items that we take, will we have public hearings where we will take public comment on specific items on the agenda as the full EOTC?
So currently, the public is invited to EOTC meetings, as you know. That will continue to be the case. And so we will be able to take that public comment at the EOTC meetings. I guess technically whether that's a hearing or not, I guess legally I'm not entirely clear. But it would still be a noticed public meeting with the EOTC with public comment that would allow for that full vote to occur.
I guess I was just thinking on individual items that we would ordinarily adopt as a resolution as like the BOCC. I'm not remembering how many of those come up as like a public hearing for us, as we, in our ordinary voting sessions where we open the public hearing just on that item, take public comment, close the public hearing, and then act. I don't know if it's envisioned that the EOTC will act in that same manner, but as a board of 15. Or 9 to 15, whatever, based on the quorum.
Yeah, it is envisioned that it would be, I don't know that the structure itself would necessarily need to change from what you currently do, because I think that the standard routine is that you all are accustomed to running meetings like that, we're accustomed to running meetings like that, so that's just the way they've evolved. And I think that continuing that same process will work moving forward in terms of taking public comment and getting that input at the meetings.
Okay, and then I did have another question related to the decision-making process. You laid out the 4 kind of types of decisions, and I guess I'm wondering do we need a 5th type of decision or some catch-all? I'm thinking about projects that maybe don't fall within the CVTP, that transportation plan to the letter, or if it would fall under expenditures or budget. For example, the request to contribute to the roundabout paving. That to me doesn't seem like a CVTP project, So would that come to us sort of under that bucket of expenditures instead?
Yeah, so that would be an expenditure. So anytime that money would go out, that would be considered an expenditure.
Okay.
So that's where I anticipated projects falling. They would either be a plan, so preparing to do a project, or we're doing the project and money would be spent. And if money is being spent, then it's an expenditure.
Okay, got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions for David on the overview of the IGA? We'll have robust discussion on the 25th as well. Okay, go ahead, David.
All right, well, there are a number of different updates for information only within your packet. Again, I think it's too much for me to try to work through them all. But I did want to open it up and see if you had any comments or questions on things that are moving on in the background. I do have one update that's moved forward since the packets went out, and that is regarding the Brush Creek Park and Ride one season food truck and farm stand experiment. So that was, we had a solicitation that was open the first part of March that closed March 12th. We actually did not receive any proposals for the food truck or farm stand. So I think that we hit as many people as I can think of to hit. I actually spent some time going up and down Valley, handing out pamphlets to all the food trucks I could identify with Brian Pettit's help. And that, I think we were able to hit a lot there. Mitch Osher has been sending them out through his contacts, through with the city of Aspen and the downtown services. So he's got a lot of contacts there. In the farm stand, we did have a couple inquiries, but nothing that came in as a proposal. So we're looking at opening up that timeline further to about mid-April, hoping we can catch someone then and get some proposals in. If we can't, I think the backup plan is to possibly amend the permit that we have, the location and extent, to do it in possibly 2023 after the construction of the flap grant improvements in 22. I think that's another ideal time to try to get some enthusiasm around the park and ride after it's been under construction for a year, similar to right now after it's been closed up for a year for a year. And it will hopefully be opening back up here full steam ahead this summer. So I think we've got that other opportunity if for whatever reason we're not able to find someone interested this year.
Okay. Any questions for David on that? Greg?
I'm kind of surprised that it was such a tepid response. I'm hoping you'll get a better response for that in the spring, maybe as we get closer to farm and local food farm season. And I'm wondering if we can reach out to one of the local papers to see if they would do a story about what's happening there, just to get some attention to this. I think if we're going to try to make the food truck farm stand thing happen, I want to make sure we've covered all our bases, because I never saw any of the solicitations, but of course I'm not a farmer, so I wouldn't expect to. But I'm hoping that we can get a broader reach this time.
And that is something that we've talked about, is possibly after the EOTC meeting on the 25th, doing a press release to try to get some more buzz around it for the next couple weeks while the solicitation is still open.
Okay, other questions for David on the information updates? I have to admit I haven't read through all of them, so I may have more on the 25th. But Steve, go ahead.
There was concern when we were looking at the roundabout, Maroon Creek roundabout construction project, if that construction time would conflict with the Brush Creek Park and Ride flap construction. Do you have any more, or could you have more information on that by the time of the EOTC meeting? I don't think it would be a good idea to have both of them going at the same time, since we would like to be able to get as many people parking in Brush Creek as possible during the roundabout construction.
So right now, it does appear that they would both be occurring at the same time. I don't think that there will be any more updates on that before now and next Thursday. But the general timeline on the flap grant improvements is that it would be going out to bid this fall. Federal Highways Administrations would be managing that process as well as the construction schedule. And that construction would then begin next spring. So that would coincide with that Highway 82 and roundabout construction currently, which means that it's going to be a busy time down through that stretch.
Seems like a bad plan to have both of them at the same time. If there's any way we could put off the roundabout reconstruction. I mean, I want to get the park and ride thing done. We've been working on that for so long, but that's just, to me, is poor government planning, and the public's going to call us on it if we're trying to do both of those at the same time and people don't have a place to park their cars. Then they're all going to be on McLean Flats Road trying to get into town, and it's going to be a mess.
So the park and ride will still be fully open during construction. So the parking will be relocated from where it's currently paved, because it's going to be completely repaved. So from where it is now over to not as far back as the SOS encampment, but on that same side near the entrance. So that's where the parking would be relocated during construction. The bus station will remain in full operation. So there's not going to be any construction except for removal of the portable toilets within the station facility. So all of that will be open and functioning. I will admit, though, that it won't be ideal having it under construction during that time. Unfortunately, Federal Highways is managing that time frame, and then we've got CDOT managing the roundabout and Highway 82 paving. So while we can have input into it, they've got their hands on the steering wheel in this case.
Plus you have a cost issue.
And then I have sort of an related but not on your list question that I'm sort of curious about, because related to state funding. So we know that the governor's proposed a $700 million stimulus package with some explicit call out for transportation shovel-ready projects. And I guess I just wonder, do you feel like any of these on this list qualify for that, or we could position ourselves once it's gone through the legislative process?
I am keeping my eye on that for sure. I think we've got several different projects that I think that could qualify as being shovel ready. We've got the Brush Creek Park and Ride improvements and our matching funds. How that might fit into what actually makes it through the legislature, I'm not sure. And then we also have the Town of Snowmass Transit Center, which is also still looking for funds on the state level. So we've got those two projects that could accommodate a good amount of money coming out. What I'm seeing so far is that it's primarily highways and bridges, which makes me think that transit centers and park and rides aren't the focal point of this stimulus so far, but I haven't seen the final document, so I can't speak definitively as to whether they would qualify or not qualify, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on that.
That's helpful input. Thank you. Patty?
Well, Kelly, that being said, that's a really good point. Brian Pettit and I are touching base with that for the Intermountain TPR. But if we could then use the money for the roundabout from the state, we could take the $271,000 that's being asked of EOTC and put that into Snowmass or the park and ride.
Right, and
Because
that's
that $271,000 is going to be a good hit to EOTC. So
I think that the roundabout might have the best chances of qualifying, since it is directly on the state highway. And if that is the case, that's definitely something that we're going to want to keep our eye on, because we can reallocate those funds to other projects.
that would be better use of our EOTC money, I think. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, no, that's all very helpful.
That's a
It
really
sounds
good
like an
point.
opportunity too to reemphasize with our legislative leaders the multimodal needs here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Rather than just traditional road and bridge. Okay. Greg, yes.
Yeah, just a thought for not that I'm an advocate for signs on the highway. We keep trying to figure out how to get rid of signs on the highway, but as I realized during this roundabout construction, I'm hoping that there's a plan, certainly with CDOT, and maybe we need to supplement to have a detour sign much farther down valley than Brush Creek, of course. Just if people are going to be detouring and have to drive over McLean Flats, we have the signage up, but we also have a sign there encouraging people to use the park and ride and to go forward to the park and ride and use it. Just thinking that there's an opportunity for signage during that construction process, temporary signage. And it's probably not our wheelhouse, but I wanted to put it on the list in case it comes up. Thanks.
And Greg, I have spoken with CDOT about that, and they have indicated that they're looking into smart signage along Highway 82 farther back than the current dynamic message sign for the park and ride. And what they're looking at is using similar technology that they used for Grand Avenue Bridge. And this hasn't been determined yet. This is still being under consideration. But it could potentially provide that travel time between taking the detour, taking the bus, and driving on Highway 82 into town.
That's great. Great to hear that. That occurred to me and I forgot to mention it. Yeah, if they could show travel time, that would really help people like me who just make our decisions based on that. Thanks.
It's gonna be a
Okay.
mess.
Great. Any further questions for Dave in prep for next week's meeting? All right, seeing none, thanks Dave for keeping us all straight and
I
on the
do
straight
have
and narrow.
one.
Yes, Patty.
Yeah, you know what's really helpful when you get down, so you're gonna actually be changing language within the existing IGA? Are you gonna be changing the existing IGA, putting new language in?
So the proposed IGA?
Yeah.
We can, yeah.
Well, yeah, just because if we have red line copies, it makes it really easy.
I have a red line copy, and I was going to put it in. Honestly, it had so many people's comments on it and so much had been shifted around that the whole thing was red and purple. And I left it out because I didn't feel as though it really
So it'd make it more
added much.
confusing to us?
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, I can understand that.
I'm happy to send it over to you if you'd like it.
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, we have an interview for a citizen board application for the Open Space and Trails Board, Wayne Ives, and looks like Charlotte is here to introduce the application process for that board. So I'll turn it over to Charlotte Anderson first.
Thank you, Kelly. So as you mentioned, Wayne is here. He is currently on the Open Space and Trails Board and is wishing to renew his term. So let's see, there's one other applicant, as I mentioned, in the AIS, and that's Matt Migelski, and he is scheduled for an interview on April 6th. So other than that, we have not received any other applications at this time. And I'll turn it back over to you, Kelly.
Any questions for Charlotte just on the status of that board? Greg?
Hi, it just occurred to me, this isn't a board that has alternates, is it? Just thinking, open space doesn't have alternates, like so many of our other advisory boards. That's one that doesn't.
No, they do not.
Got it. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Thanks. Welcome, Wayne. Long time no see.
And hi, Wayne. Nice to have you with us today. We generally follow a format for these interviews where we will invite you to talk about your continuing interest in the board and any of your credentials that you wish to highlight. And then we'll do a roundtable with the BOCC members to ask any questions. And typically that rounds out our 15 minutes together. And then, usually at a different time, we talk as a board about the appointments and then give direction to Charlotte to forward a resolution to us to make those appointments formal. All right, so yeah, please go ahead. Nice to see you. Thanks for reapplying.
Well, I've enjoyed my time on the board. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years already, but I think that it's kind of addicting to be involved in the open space program because it's such a unique and really cool program. And I do have a passion and always have for public lands and all the things that open space does, the access and trails and wildlife habitat. The ag program I think is really exciting. And I look forward to serving another term if you guys want me. And I think we've made some big strides during the last 5 years. The biodiversity policy that we implemented was one of the first things we worked on when I got on the board. I'm proud of being involved in that. I think that provides really good direction for future decision making. And I think, obviously we've made some really neat purchases and conservation easement acquisitions and that kind of thing. So I think my experience, my career on the Forest Service kind of helps me relate to some of the staff's issues with management of the lands we have in our portfolio. So I hope I'm helpful in that regard. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, I'll let you ask me questions.
Okay. Thanks. And I'll just note, Francie's having some internet connectivity issues, so she's hoping to rejoin us, in case you're wondering where she went. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, my internet's been pretty bad today too, so I may have to drop picture out, but I'll reconnect as often as I need to. But Wayne, I really appreciate your application, and it's been really great to serve concurrently, as I think we both came on about the same time when I got on BOCC, and it's great to have you there. And I find myself always thinking about your history with the Forest Service and how that has really helped your perspective. But I realize I don't really understand or know what you did with the Forest Service. Could you give us a little background there, a little bit more detail?
Sure. I was the rangeland manager on the Soperson Aspen districts, basically dealing with grazing permits and the local ranchers in the valley, as well as the invasive species program, noxious weeds. I served on the Garfield County Weed Advisory Board for a while I was with the Forest Service. And those were my main duties. I did firefighting and building maintenance responsibilities and all sorts of stuff. But the main thing was working with the ranchers in the valley on the grazing permit system.
Well, that's great, and I think that your insight there has been pretty useful, and I really like some of the issues that you bring up, which I think are in front and center for all of us with real estate boom and a pressure on open space and wildlands and property. So I'm glad to have your thoughtful presence there, and I certainly support your renewal.
Thanks.
Patty.
Hi, Wayne. Nice to see you twice in one day. Yeah, I want to kind of echo what Greg said. It's really been great to have you on Open Space and Trails. Your calm demeanor, I don't think I've ever seen you really get riled up. You just kind of come across very calm, and it, the whole Crystal River Trail issue was quite interesting, and you were right there front and center for all of that, especially with your knowledge of the wildlife habitat and the mix between recreational use and protection of that habitat. So I just really want to thank you. I also really want to point out in your application, you really like the decision-making process when it includes the on the ground, the boots on the ground site visits, and I totally agree with you on that. And I'm sure you love getting back out there into nature again, where you spent so many years with the Forest Service. And one closing last remark is I like the new mustache.
I do too. It suits you.
It does.
Steve.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Wayne, for serving these last 5 years. I know when we appointed you 5 years ago, it was really my hope and expectation that your experience as a land manager with the Forest Service would be a really good perspective to have on our OTC board, and that has played out completely. I think, you have different experiences than other people there, and I think that's been really beneficial to the board. I know when I drive up the Crystal River, I am always thinking about the Crystal Trail and thinking about different segments of it and wondering what it's ultimately going to end up being when all is said and done. Do you have any thoughts about the Crystal River now that it's the big decision making is behind us a little bit, but since you live up on the Crystal, you probably think about it a lot even now. And do you have any insights you'd like to share with us on that?
Well, the Crystal River Trail planning process we learned a lot, I think, both both our board and I know I learned a lot. It was just the scope of the project and the complexity of it, and all the public interest in it was interesting to try and manage as a board. And we did that jointly with you guys. But as far as the future, I supported the decision to select the Redstone to Burr Pass Trail as our first proposed segment, and I'm excited that that's now progressing through the environmental analysis process, and that maybe someday it'll be constructed in some form, and connect that Crested Butte side over to our side. As far as the trail from Redstone down to the existing Crystal Trail, I still think there's just a lot of issues. I don't think the decision making is done by any means, and it's going to be complex. I do think about it all the time, and if certain segments would make sense as standalone or not. It's going to be costly as well, which I don't know. It's hard to wrap my head around it ever being completed during my lifetime. But I think it's just a very complex, between the land ownership and wildlife issues, and just the increased pressure on all our open spaces. It's going to be some tough decisions ahead on that one.
Thanks, Wayne. And I want to welcome Francie back. Francie, we're getting, I think, towards the end of our roundtable. Did you have questions for Wayne?
No, I don't, but I enjoyed reading his application, and I've enjoyed watching him in action. So I have no questions, and I love your service. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Francie.
And I do have a question. I guess, Wayne, do you, with your background and I think your participation over the last 5 years, do you see issues related to land management that, the BOCC's leadership should be emphasizing more, or, prioritizing more from where you sit?
My perspective is that you've been very helpful, and I think we have a good relationship between our two boards. I think your support of some of the, funding for federal forest protection officers, like in Wildwood, to try and help solve some problems. When you have that mixed ownership of open space lands and national forest, maybe BLM and other places, managing that dynamic is pretty hard. I feel like the board is, your board has been very supportive of that, and I appreciate that.
Great, thank you. And Greg, I saw your hand again. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more, just a couple. One was just that, the first thought I thought was, wow, Wayne really is calm. As Patty said, Wayne, he does bring a calmness to the meetings, and a certain, very comfortable, wise demeanor, which I do appreciate. So thank you for that. And I was just wondering if we could farm you out from open space to solve some, water issues that we have flowing around. Put you on top of some of those things. So that was the first suggestion.
That's about
and the other one was,
I think.
Yeah, I know. You're a wise man, wiser even than I thought. The other question I had was, how do you feel about open space when we participate in acquisitions and management and projects outside the county line? A lot of us always talk about how we wish the counties were set up on watershed boundaries rather than political boundaries, and often it just makes sense to be involved in things that really do affect our valley. You have thought much about, how far is the reach of open space, or should it be?
Well, I've, in the last 5 years, I've advocated for a couple projects down valley in Garfield County. The Red Hill area acquisition by ABLT, and more recently the Kaufman Ranch. It's hard to, it's always been a confusing county line boundary here. As you know, in the Forest Service, on our district, we had 4 counties: Gunnison, Eagle, Pitkin, and Garfield that we dealt with, and that presented a lot of challenges. I appreciate the BOCC's willingness to look at it as more of a watershed approach. You know, even though there's a line on the map, a lot of people that work or live on the boundaries of Pitkin County recreated in Garfield County and Eagle County and other places, and the wildlife obviously cross those boundaries all the time without regard to what the human line on the map is. So I think it's important to, you know, to try and look at it as more watershed approach. Granted that the funding does, we got to remember the funding does come from Pitkin County, and that's an important consideration.
Okay, well, thank you. And Wayne, you know, I support your continued presence on the board, and I do just want to sort of call out one particular success that I think is directly attributable to you and your expertise related to the transfer of the sheep grazing permit, you know, out of the Crystal to help, you know, promote the sustainability of the native sheep habitat over there. And so, you know, thank you for contributing all of your expertise and effort on that. Okay, and I think with that, so like I said, we'll discuss the appointments, and then they'll come back in a formal resolution process. So thank you for your time. It's nice to see you.
All right, nice to see you guys.
Okay.
Bye, Wayne.
Bye.
And then we are continuing on our agenda with our second citizen board interview, and this is for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we have applicant Suzanne Caskey joining us, and I'll just check in with Charlotte Anderson on this board appointment process for P&Z. Hi, Charlotte.
Thank you, Kelly. Suzanne Caskey is a new applicant for P&Z. We have 3 renewing members: Joe Kraybacher, James Fashancy, which you interviewed already, and Monty Thompson. So those interviews for Joe and Monty are upcoming in the next couple of weeks. But there have not been any, well, there's Justin Nyberg is also applying, and he is a new applicant. So that's the only one. He will be interviewed on March 23rd. Other than that, we have not received any other applications.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions with Charlotte on the applicant pool for this board? Okay, seeing none. Hi, Suzanne, welcome. Thank you for applying and for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, typically how we conduct these is we'll invite you to talk about your interest in the board and any qualifications that you want to highlight, and then we'll open it up for a roundtable for the commissioners to ask questions, if that sounds good to you.
Sure, it does.
Okay.
I'll tell you, my current interest was sparked in large part, in fact, probably completely, by serving on the Volunteer Growth Outreach Committee this past fall. That was startling to me to see, well, it was heartening to see that the Board of County Commissioners was, that your aim was to look at growth and development, its pacing and all through the lens of climate change. I had no idea what I was going to see in the charts that were presented by the planning staff. The amount of information, the data that you've gathered over time, and I understand you're still in the process of gathering, was stunning in the direct effect of growth and the use of construction materials and the disposal or trying to dispose of construction materials, and how it was so not just arithmetically but geometrically connected to change in our climate. to think that for me, and then I have to say that I served on County P&Z from about 1982 to 96, and that was an exciting time, as it always is. You all know that. There are no dull days when it comes to discussion of policy regarding growth and how we develop over time in this county. And so it made me want to get involved. It also made me want to run in the other direction, I must say, and tell myself that I've done this before and I've done my part, and so, but I'd much rather be a part of this and put in my time and commitment to working on these issues, especially since now there's a way to work on them locally like this. That's exciting to me, than to sit around and whine and blame and complain. So I must say that my husband, I'm still pretty much a newlywed after 2 years, but my husband said something to me like, "You're what?" "You're going to do what?" But I think he'll be all right. And from what I understand, I do need to ask some more questions about the time commitment, because the time commitment that we had when I was serving on P&Z was staggering. I mean, it was, meetings would go on for hours and hours, and we much of the time would meet every week, and growth management time would, the competition would just go on forever and ever. And there were other meetings like the ones that dealt with wildcats that started in the morning at 9 o'clock and ended at 1 o'clock the next morning. And so that, looking back on that, I'm not sure I would be ready to do such a thing, to spend that many hours. But it seems to me that the present commission has more sense than ours did, or things have settled down just a little bit. I do have those qualms, but I do want to get involved again, and especially at this time, because as I understand it, especially reading after, talking to some people in the planning office, and then after the report on your retreat, you do aim to not only do that, one of your aims is to do more master planning, but also a major goal is to deal with growth and development issues through this lens of climate change. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. At our retreat, we had adopted one of our goals to be this continuing discussion, and looking at, land use and climate change nexus, and that for this year, we define our goals for a year, that process would resume likely in the fall.
Okay, good. Well, it seems like it will be a lively set of discussions because of what, judging from what we heard from the development community most recently, and hopefully, maybe sometime in this county, in this valley, we'll find peace over such issues. I certainly hope that there can be a greater measure of unity and understanding and growth than we're seeing on the national level right now, but I know that's not guaranteed. Another question that I have of you is, when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission before, our caseload was so heavy that we were, several of us, 4 of us, of the 7, felt like we were constantly putting out fires instead of doing long-term planning, so that we could not just be going about growth or development with a flashcard approach, trying to make developers guess what we really wanted, but to be much clearer about it. And that resulted in us wanting to, that resulted in 4 of us agreeing to serve on the Planning Commission as it was, but to also form a rather temporary, I think it was about 2 years long-term Planning Commission, so that we could be proactive in going into the neighborhoods and going out and speaking to the ranchers at their kitchen tables and going to Woody Creek. That was really something to help them write their own master plan. And at that time, Woody Creek, some of you will remember, they were threatening to secede, and they had a secession map and all sorts of stuff. And so we went out and worked there for about doing sort of this extra duty for, I think it was about a year, and it was one of the most heartening experiences I've ever been through, because it empowered citizens who had never, I mean, there was one man who said, I don't even look at myself in the mirror in the morning. I'm that shy, but I want to get involved with this. And he did. So anyway, I don't think I want to dive back into that again, but I'm not sure how you go about your master planning processes now. Do you do it face-to-face with communities, with caucus areas, or do they write their own? Do they get help from the county in facilitating that?
Did you want to comment now, Patty, or did you want to wait?
If
I
somebody
can
wants to
answer.
answer Suzanne's questions, then I have
Okay.
questions for Suzanne.
So, Suzanne, I think you are asking some questions that are probably better answered by staff, but I'm happy to provide what I understand.
Okay.
You know, I think now, because we have our own county department that is more fully staffed out, that our staff does lead the processing of the long-range planning, and it, you know, includes the stakeholders along the way. And so that's where the bulk of the community outreach is occurring. At some point, planning and zoning gets involved in that. I'm not sure at what point in the process that happens, but you know, again, I think we can get staff to directly answer your questions to help you consider, you know, if you want your application to continue along, which I hope you will. So maybe, does that help, at least on that point? And, you know, I haven't heard the planning and zoning meetings going for 16 hours. I think that they have a much more focused time, 2 times a month is what I understand their meetings are held on the evening for several hours. And as you may or may not know, our growth management competition has sort of become a non-competition over the years. And so that the intensity of that process has diminished with other tools, like the ability to purchase TDRs and things, has also, I think, contracted from what your initial experience was.
I see. Yeah.
I'll offer that as the board, but we'll have our community development staff also follow up with you directly so that you can get all of your questions more fully vetted.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, I know some of our board members have some questions for you as well, but this has been very, for me, informative, so thank you for your insights. Patty?
Yeah, hi Suzanne, it's nice to see you. I think you came off planning and zoning just as I came on planning and zoning in the mid-1990s, so I'm sorry we missed each other there. As far as long-range planning, Kelly's absolutely right. We do, you know, Ellen being our long-range planner does meet with the caucuses, because most of the plans now are just updates. And then they come back to P&Z for final adoption, and then the Board of Commissioners just gets to review them. So it's really up to P&Z to actually adopt them. And a lot of our land use applications and stuff over the years, the past, I don't know how many years it's been since I've been on the board, we've streamlined the process, so a lot of decisions can now be made administratively through the department, so not everything needs to be seen. So it does free up the docket, the scheduling for both planning and zoning and the Board of Commissioners. And Kelly's right, we don't let the meetings go on because your blood sugar drops and you're no longer thinking straight after X amount of hours. And that also brings to mind the fact that I don't think you get sandwiches anymore for dinner during the meetings like we used to in the old days, but we might have to bring that back again. But I'm so excited to see your name come up for these interviews. I'm really excited about bringing you back on board. The other thing, you did mention in here, in your application, you're concerned about house size. And I think that's gonna be one of the front and center. So how do you feel about 15,000 square foot homes, 57.5, those two numbers jump up, and where might you like to see them go?
I think they're vastly overdone, and I must tell you, at least twice when I was on PNZ before, the Board of County Commissioners came to us saying we want the Planning and Zoning Commission to delve into the house size question and come up with recommendations. And we did, and we worked very, very hard on that, and we didn't expect it to be easy then to present it to the BOCC or to the community, and sure enough, it wasn't. That first time, I felt, I think all of us felt quite undermined by the BOCC, who had indicated that they really wanted to consider smaller house sizes. But when we made our presentation, our recommendations to the BOCC, and then held it in a big community meeting, we really got hung out to dry. And so I had to think, and I still have to think, that's part of it. That's what happens sometimes. Then 6 months later, when I think it was Tom Blake came in and said, we are still interested in a BOCC, on the BOCC with house size, thinking that they're much too big. We want you to look at this again. and I remember telling him that I felt like that was asking me to take off all my clothes and walk way, way out there on the end of the limb. And there was going to be nobody out there to cover me up or protect me in any way. But that time we came to a much more of a middle ground and an understanding. Saying all of that, I'd do it again. I'd work hard on it again, even if I knew at the end of it that you guys were going to say, no, we really liked the 15,000 square feet homes all along. For me, I think 15,000 square feet is too large. And I think increasingly, I believe that it's too large. That now has been quantified for me in a way so that it's not just a feeling. It's not just I don't like them, or I don't think that they fit, or I don't think that they help us maintain or preserve character at all. Now I can see the numbers. And the numbers that were presented in the growth outreach are, to me, undeniable. I mean, I can't look at those and say there's really no difference in terms of energy use or impact from a 5,000 square foot house or a 3,500 square foot house to a 9,000 or 10,000 square foot house. It is right there in black and white. It's not an opinion. There it is. So if we are going to do something about climate change in this community, we just have to have the will and the guts to do it. I have received calls. My home caucus for quite a number of years was in Old Snowmass. My first caucus I lived in was Maroon Creek, and then we moved to Old Snowmass and built a house there, and that was a joy to not only live there but to work with that particular caucus. I've received calls recently from members of the, Steve, I think that you've split now Snowmass and Capitol Creek, and so I've heard from people in Capitol Creek who are in quite a state of an alarm now because of a recent proposal of, I think, an 8,000 square foot house, 7,000 square foot house, with being built by someone who's already built a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot home. And the people that have been calling me from that caucus, because they're friends and because we were caucus members together before, are crying out for help, saying, this isn't right, to build houses of this size in historic ranching community, just because of the history of it, for one thing. But besides that, it really changes the character of an area like that, and character is important to us. We sell it, we make money on it, for one thing, but it's just a shame, I think, to see that happen. And when it's quantified, like you've now quantified it, I don't think we can look away anymore.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Suzanne. Patty, were you done?
I'm good. Thanks,
Okay.
Suzanne.
Other questions for Suzanne? Steve, and then Francie.
Oh, hi, Suzanne. It's so good to see you.
Hi, great. It's great to see you, Steve.
I missed our annual party this year.
No, we have to make up for that. It has to be twice as big next year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So it was such a wonderful experience when we were creating our first master plan, and you were so involved and so passionate about that.
That was a wonderful experience.
Capitol Creek area.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to warn you that the caucus members now, they're dissatisfied with the current master plan, which kind of was imposed on the caucus by our community development department. They were trying to standardize all the caucus bylaws and everything, more or less standardize them. There are certainly differences, but I just have to warn you that there could be revisions coming back from the Snowmass Capitol Creek caucus, which actually includes lower Snowmass Creek, not the upper part.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you would have a conflict on that because you moved from Alexander Avenue many years ago, and
Yes, I did.
you've been to Mexico and to Georgia and back since then, many other places.
Oh, no.
Could you address that question? You don't feel like you would have any conflicts of interest or emotional ties that would kind of sway your decision on things like that, do you?
Well, I don't have a conflict of interest in any way that I can think of. Emotional ties, we all have, and one thing that I enjoyed so much the first time around with P&Z was that I always felt like I got to spend this many hours a month trying to look at what truth was really the truth. How I could be honest and true to myself, honest and true to my community, and still not work on it like I was an automaton. I have strong, wonderful memories of, Jack, who died now 3 years ago, he and I built that house in Old Snowmass. I loved being in that, but I'll also have to say that when I was living up Maroon Creek and I was serving on P&Z, that my favorite caucus was the Old Snowmass caucus, because when the rest of the county was losing its character bucketful by bucketful, you all were holding on to it. I mean, just like your father did, just like your mother did, just like you and Molly are doing, and that counts for something. I guess it's one of the best things about living here to me is that we really are a special place, and we know it. And it's not just because what people think of it, this place when they come skiing, the characters and the character that has been engendered here. I remember that your father used to say that on the growth management competition, he thought that we needed to have points given for funky, because we were losing all of that. But no, I don't feel a conflict of interest, and I would argue very loud and strong with someone who felt I had a conflict of interest. It certainly couldn't be proven legally, and my love and my heart go where they go, and I go with them.
Thank you. And Francie.
Hi, Suzanne. It's really nice to meet you.
Hi, Francie.
I was really impressed reading your years of service to Pitkin County. It's pretty impressive.
Thank
And
you.
listening to you today, I can see that we are all kindred spirits in terms of house size. I want to let you know that at the retreat, we had 3 pillars on which we plan to take on growth management, and that was climate change, character, and equity. So it wasn't just climate change, but certainly character in terms of the different communities and trying to be true to their history and their current residents. And then equity, to try to make this a place where we're not quite so imbalanced in terms of the resources of the people who live here. So it sounds like it would be wonderful to have you back on P&Z. I can tell that I would love to work with you. And I think you're going to find that this particular Board of County Commissioners is probably going to be pretty receptive to your ideas.
Thank you so much. I must applaud you on those 3 pillars, and couldn't be better as far as I'm concerned. And I'll applaud you on something else a little bit later when we're coming to the end of this. Thank you, Francie. Thank you for that, for your comments.
Okay. And I do want to be mindful of time because we are running over, but are there other questions for Suzanne? I'll say, Suzanne, you did address my questions because I wanted to know sort of your thoughts about the nexus between climate change and the use of homes and the data that was presented from our ComDev staff, as well as sort of navigating when our board and P&Z have differences of opinion, and you've lived that. So I really appreciate that insight because that's challenging. And it's challenging for me, I know, as a commissioner to know how to handle as well. So, Greg, go ahead.
I think we've covered this pretty well. I just wanted to say I'm really grateful, Suzanne, that you've decided to come back in and offer to re-up, because I know how much work you've put into the community over so many decades. I'm in awe, and I just have to say I'm really grateful that you're here. The only questions I would have right now would be for John Kelleher. I know he's a newlywed, and what is he thinking about all this? And as you hinted, so maybe he should call me up and we can have a chat and I'll discuss.
He's locked himself in the garage right now.
He's hiding. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming in, and we'll look forward to getting back to you when we have a decision made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I must tell you, I've been out beating the bushes trying to find someone who would take this cup. and I have contacted 3 different people. In fact, all 3 were either served when I did on the airport committee or on this growth committee. I don't know that any of them are going to come along, but I'm going to follow up with them. Before I say goodbye to you, thank you so much for this time, but thank you so much for keeping me and John healthy. I know that this has not been easy. I know that you've just been pulled to shreds, or people have tried to do it. I really appreciate your being so steady and so looking so calm and seeming so rock steady through this. I appreciate it. I owe my life to you. In many ways, I believe it. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Suzanne.
We appreciate your time and your application. And yes, we will have a discussion after we've completed the interviews and then make our appointments. And Charlotte will continue to communicate with you. And I do just want to make sure that, Charlotte, could you follow up with Suzanne just to get her connected with ComDev staff so her questions can be more sufficiently answered, please?
Yes, I will do that. I think Suzanne Wolf may have been busy today and couldn't join us, so I will. And the meetings are first and third Tuesdays of each month.
Good.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay.
Charlotte, it's good to see you.
Nice to meet you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, folks, so let's move on to future agendas. John Peacock, any changes?
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
I'll try and catch us up on time a little bit, just to have a couple things to go over with you. So First, wanted to let the board know that a joint meeting with Kevin Werner with both the City of Aspen and Town of Snowmass Village is confirmed for April 20th from 4 to 6. So we'll be working on the materials for that, but we were able to get all three bodies together. And then I would note, I had to cancel a meeting with Charlotte where we were going to go over all of the future agenda items that Kelly had brought up last time. So you're not seeing those in this round of future agendas, but we're going to meet coming up here pretty soon and get those scheduled out. So those are still on our radar screen. And that's all I have for you on future agendas.
Okay, and sorry, I'm pulling up my notes, so I don't have my screen up yet. So let's see, any questions for John? Steve and then Patty.
So there is a change in the CCI schedule. Because the legislative season is shortened, they are bumping up the next round of steering committee meetings and it's listed on our future agendas on April 9th, or the April 6th future agendas listing meetings for April 9th. Those meetings are actually going to be April 1st and 2nd, the CCI steering committee meetings. So we need to change the future agendas just for noticing purposes.
Okay, thank you. Patty?
Yeah, John Peacock, I don't have anything. Our meetings on Fridays
I don't believe
spoil
it.
my Tuesdays, so yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, other future agenda items? No, nothing for our running list here. And Francie, I'll note that I said I was going to follow up related to the discussion on ponds. So I just wanted to connect with you on that because, John Ely has indicated that it probably makes some sense for the board to figure out what kind of direction we want to give him on this, and that will likely involve a broader conversation. His questions to me were, do you just not like ponds, or are you trying to make a statement about beneficial use of water, or are you trying to address evaporative loss of water from ponds? What is it you guys want to figure out here? So I think, in talking with him, there was some recommendation about, do we want to invite the division engineer to come talk to us about different approaches? Do we want to invite, our experts from QQ, which is the water quality quantity folks who have put together some land use planning documents related to water use, in order to build the foundation for a discussion of how we might make a code change related to aesthetic and piscatorial uses in ponds. So I think that's all forthcoming, but I did just want to give you a little bit of an update as to that we have some sort of pre-work to do before any code changes would happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think having some people come in and giving us some education would be great.
And I can work with John to figure out the timing and the speakers on that, and what that presentation would look like.
Thanks a lot, Kelly.
I do also just want to know, I know, John, you have my list, but I think we maybe need to revisit the night sky resolution, maybe more quickly than some of the other things, because I do feel like those ladies had a time-bound aspect of their request, and I want to make sure we honor it. So that's all I have to note. Okay, not seeing any other future agenda item discussion. We'll move on to the COVID-19 update.
Thanks, Kelly. And apparently my internet is being a little wonky, so hopefully I'll make it through here.
I don't think you're alone today.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Okay, is that right? Okay, are you all seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and we may have a little bit more information than a half hour here, but I forgot to put my usual comic in.
Oh, it's not very funny right now.
I know, that's so disappointing. So we'll go over the metrics, as you know, those have not been headed in the right direction. Talk a little bit about variance. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about that. Vaccine update. Talk a little bit about the stimulus package that was signed last week, and then if we have time, additional questions and discussion. Concerning trend, as the board will recall, we are being measured on a different set of metrics. As a county with a population under 30,000, we are now using a total case count to determine where we are in the dial. This has been steadily going up. This is not totally a surprise with some of the loosening as well as spring break crowds. We did exceed the threshold for total case count for Orange. We did get clarification from the state about the process for how counties would be moved. And we would have to sustain 2 elevated metrics for 5 consecutive days, which would trigger the process for the county to move to a more restrictive level. And so we, in this case, sorry, I cut and paste this from an email. We as CDPHE in this case would confirm the metrics on day 5, issue a formal letter on day 6, and make an official move on day 7. And so if we continue to see increased cases, if we stay in orange on 2 metrics, and I'll show you where we are on test positivity next, for 5 consecutive days, then on day 7, we would be moved to the more restrictive level of the dial. If day 5 falls on a Friday or Saturday, the process gets delayed until the following Monday. That's with CDPHE. Right now, our test positivity rates have been in orange for those days. So we're really going to be watching those total case counts, 7-day case counts. We do think that there may be tests out there, a number of tests, again, that we're waiting for results on that may change these test positivity rates and bring them down. So we're going to continue to look at that. And you can see our testing numbers have dropped off quite a bit, which is what makes us think we're going to see some more tests come in. So I'm going to hold there and see if there's any questions on the metrics. Okay.
Now, I'll just note, from the way that I've looked at it, you know, our case rates are similar to what they were at the beginning of December. Is that correct? And that's a helpful framework, at least for me, to sort of know what we were talking about and how everyone was feeling then and try and keep it into perspective now.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think that's a good comparison. If you look at our incidence rate on the dial, it's roughly about 450 to 460 per 100,000. So that is where we were before we saw some of our spikes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Francie.
Everything on my computer is so slow, I'm sorry. How much of this is related to the high school or to the schools?
Not very much. If you hold for a couple of slides, print out some data on that.
Okay, cool.
Are there other questions before I move on?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so we are starting to detect variants in Pickens County. The UK variant, the variant coming out of California are the two that have primarily been confirmed. We have additional suspected cases. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot in Colorado, but we understand how the exponential growth works. What we know about these variants and why we're concerned about them, this is a very normal and expected process with viruses. They go through generations rather quickly. They mutate, and every now and then those mutations will give a competitive advantage. And so in this case, what we're seeing with these variants that have been identified is that generally they have a higher transmission rate. They're easier to catch and spread. And so they tend to move more quickly through a community. And with the two variants that we've identified in Pickens County, this is true among children. The other thing that's starting to emerge is studies that show that the incubation period for variants may be longer than what we're calling the wild type. We're trying to find the right terminology for the COVID-19 strain that we know emerged in Wuhan, but the COVID-19, the variants tend to stay more contagious for a longer period of time. And so as the board is aware, we did have some quarantining processes with a negative test where quarantine periods could be shortened. What we're seeing is that some studies are showing that the variants tend to have higher viral load later in that incubation period, between days 10 and 14. Right now, we're not seeing evidence, at least for the variants that are here, that they cause more severe illness. They have the same symptoms and can also cause asymptomatic infection. It's also believed that the vaccine is effective against the variants that we're seeing here. And really, the best thing that we can do to slow the spread of the variants while we're trying to get through our vaccinations is what we've been saying for the last year now. It's really the 5 commitments to containment, and limiting contact with anyone outside your household and getting vaccinated when it's your turn. So continuing to maintain those 6 feet of distances, the masking, washing your hands often, staying home if you feel sick, and getting tested if you have symptoms. That is the best way right now to slow the spread of these variants until vaccines are broadly available. You probably saw the story in the paper, in the quarantine. We had gone to more of a 10-day quarantine or 7 days with a negative test. However, we are following right now CDC guidance that when a variant is suspected, when exposure to a variant is suspected or confirmed, those go back to 14 days. Some changes after you are fully vaccinated, and that's considered 2 weeks after the second shot for the 2-shot regime, or I believe it's 4 weeks with the 1 shot. Quarantine is no longer required. In terms of the schools, Francie, this is the data I think that you were asking for. Isolated are the kids who have a confirmed positive test. In the elementary and middle school, though, there are a number of kids that are quarantined or individuals that are quarantined because of exposure to those positive cases. And so some of those are suspected variants, and so they're under the 14-day quarantine. Does that answer the question that you had earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess before I go on to vaccinations, any questions? Okay.
Francie.
Yeah, I have questions about these numbers in terms of the Board of Health taking any actions. Have you heard anything about that, or Greg, maybe? Because it's definitely looking different than it did 3 weeks ago. So just wondering if the Board of Health is considering making any changes in our restrictions or anything.
Greg, maybe, I think Greg's internet may be challenged a little bit too. Francie, right now, the direction that the Board of Health, or that staff is working under from the Board of Health, is to follow the state dial metrics. And so right now, we will be looking to follow this process of 2 elevated metrics for 5 consecutive days, and working with the state to move on the dial from there. So if that's the case, right now, if the 7-day case trend continues, as well as our positivity rate, for the 5 days, we would move to orange 1 week from yesterday. And that's the guidance from the Board of Health until there's another meeting or a change in policy.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Greg, I hope I represented that correctly from your perspective.
I caught most of that, and it sounded good. I'm not going to add anything. Only that it seems like, as usual, things are in flux with the state, and then the school district has its protocols as well, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do as there's such pressure to reopen and get the schools back open. This is all coming at the wrong time for that, and I'm not sure what we can expect to see from them.
I have a question. Is Aspen Schools have a planned spring break?
Broke it up on me. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll turn my video off.
Yes, there is a spring break planned. We did meet with the school, Jordana and I met with the school board and administration yesterday. They are working on a testing plan as both faculty and students come back from spring break. And I would note that the faculty and staff who did take advantage of getting vaccinated should reach full vaccination by that spring break period. So we're hoping to see some advantages there. And I am totally forgetting which week it is. I think it's spring break is in 1 or 2 weeks. Can't remember.
Anyone know?
Roy,
I think it's next week.
Yeah.
Not this week, but next week, I think.
I think
Patty?
that's it.
Roaring Fork School District starts their break this next week, the 22nd. But I'm not sure if Aspen's coinciding with the Roaring Fork School District.
Okay, thanks.
Vaccinations, boy, are we on a roller coaster with this, and we're on that downward kind of slide right now. So last week, we were frankly disappointed that we got, basically 300 doses, and it's actually 400 because I do not have the 100 doses that came through Community Health Services on their equity clinic here, I just realized, so I apologize for that. Nonetheless, really 193 first doses that should be, and 207 second doses for 400 total that we did last week. This week we had requested 2,340 doses. That was 2 Pfizer boxes. We received 0. We have been in touch with CDPHE, and Kelly, thank you. I saw you sent an email also to CDPHE with concerns. We're in weekly contact through the hospital, community health services, and public health. Frankly, we're especially disappointed because we were told to look at these couple weeks as new baseline numbers. So we're certainly hoping that that is not the case, because we will fall way behind in terms of the phasing. But what we have coming this week is no first doses. We do have 1,170 second doses that are coming. We have delivered just over 10,000 doses in the tent at this point, both first and second doses. We're ready when we get the vaccines, and we need to continue to advocate for that. I will say the snow, we had an issue with our tent. It did not hold the snow loads from this most recent storm. So we are having to get it repitched for Thursday for our second dose clinic. We're gonna look at reconfiguring it, try and get a steeper pitch on that roof, because so you could, as we all know, get another heavy spring storm, but we'll have that ready for Thursday, and are working through that. Yeah, so we are encouraging folks to continue to look at where first doses are coming. We know that you know, some of our partner agencies in the region are getting those first doses, and if you qualify, get in line wherever you can get that dose.
Thank you. I think Greg had a question. I have a question also. Greg, go ahead.
Just quickly regarding the tent, is the tent salvageable?
Greg, I know we had our staff down there looking at it. It sounds like we may be doing a new tent, so we'll be looking at that.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask, so I've heard about hesitance for vaccination within our school staff, and I'm just wondering, are we involved in any outreach regarding education with our medical community? I think it's, you know, we should be doing everything we can to encourage people to get vaccinated, and when I hear that it includes a significant number of teachers, it makes me really nervous. I'm just wondering if, you know, what can we possibly do to help?
Yeah, well, we've certainly, AVH has certainly stepped up with messaging from their medical community, doctors who have chosen to get the vaccine. We've certainly included that in our messaging. I do not have off the top, Greg, what that looks like for Aspen or Roaring Fork school districts right now. I think we did get a pretty good percentage of folks, certainly not 100%, but there is still some hesitancy out there. We're going to continue with messaging. Our hope is that more and more people get vaccinated, and maybe, you know, unfortunately, some people still choose to get their information from social media or places that are unreliable about the vaccine, and sometimes consistent messaging and time is what overcomes that, and so we're going to stay persistent, and hopefully we'll overcome some of that hesitancy.
If I could ask one more question, just regarding what I am hearing through the news and other sources, just about how the COVID variant boosters may be in our future. You know, maybe there's an annual booster shot or something like that. There's also talk about vaccine passports. That, you know, if you can present evidence that you've been vaccinated, then you can participate in an event or something. I'm guessing it ought to be on the radar, and I'm just wondering if, you know, have people been talking about that?
Yeah, we're certainly trying to anticipate that more for summer planning and next winter. As always, this is going to be more effective if it's done at a state or national level than if we try and do a unique local program. Not that a unique local program can't be effective, but we know there are challenges with doing that, and so you know, we're hopeful that these programs. I'm not hearing that conversation at the state level at this point. And I don't know if any of you that are participating on statewide groups are hearing any more on that.
No, I have a question, John, that I'm just a little confused about, quite honestly, as to what phase people are eligible for. Because I thought the communication from the state was 1B3 and then 1B4 is coming in a few days. And then I see that Valley View's, you know, marketing appointments for 1B4, and Grand Junction has opened it up to everyone, you know, so I'm just struggling with this.
Well, yeah, your confusion is legit. Technically, this week, you know, we should be, folks who are in 1B4 are qualified. I think what we're seeing is there are not consistent processes throughout the state to do this. So we have a pretty rigorous pre-registration program, and we've been trying to stick as much as practical to those phases that the state has laid out. Because we do think they've been laid out based on risk and equity concerns that are legitimate. I think a number of areas maybe haven't had the same type of registration processes, and so in those cases, sometimes at a certain point in the process, they're looking for arms, either because appointments didn't show up or they had more doses than they were prepared to screen folks for, and folks are getting in, right? If you happen to be at the right place at the right time, and then I'm not quite sure how the other clinics are opening up to general population, because our understanding is we're supposed to be working through finishing up 1B3 and moving into the 1B4 and getting at least 70% of the 1B4 before we move to phase 2. In Pickens County, because the phases have changed, right, we had started doing categories of folks who in 1B3 that got moved to 1B4, so we finished those folks before 1B4 came, and that's just because it's changed, and so we had already started on that path. Mm-hmm. So totally legit that you're confused, because it is not consistent across the state right now. I don't know if that helps you.
No, yeah. Again, in this emergency pandemic response, it's like, you know, the question of what is ethically and philosophically correct runs up against what is practically, you know, best for our constituents. And, you know, we're trying to do what's right, and it's creating other issues, you know, and that's really a tough place to be, I think, for me, you know, as a person who wants to tell people don't skip the line, do what's right, and yet you know, if you have an opportunity, go take it. Like, there's conflicting messages, and, you know, I'm just hopeful that the people who really need it are getting it. And they're not getting pushed further back in the line because people who don't really need it are able to cut ahead. So, again, pretty frustrating.
And at the end of the day, and Kelly, that is really the important message that I think we need to keep reiterating is the queue was created for a reason. It was created based on risk and mitigating risk in the community. And if we wait our turn, we're going to get through this. We're going to need more vaccines than we're getting right now to get through it. I will say that. But, you know, cutting in line isn't really helping the bigger picture at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I continue to argue, you know, Colorado's not doing great comparatively getting shots in arms to other places around the country, and I would say Pickens County is probably doing it better than everywhere else in Colorado, so let us help Colorado improve, you know, in that regard. But anyway.
Yeah, we have gotten every dose we've received in an arm according to those priorities within 7 days of receiving them.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll continue to do that.
Other items here? No? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, just a couple more. You all probably saw CDC did come out with guidance for fully vaccinated folks, including if everyone's fully vaccinated, you can be indoors without wearing masks or physically distancing in small groups. The gathering size limit and household limits still apply. And visit with unvaccinated people from single households who are at low risk of severe COVID-19 disease, so that'd be your younger folks and such. And then you can refrain from quarantine and testing following a known exposure if you don't have any symptoms. Guidance only, but starting to get some clarity on how, you know, we're going to be transitioning as we get vaccinated. And I know I'm running out of time. I just want to highlight a few of the things from the federal coronavirus aid bill that was signed into law on March 11th. There is a lot more detail behind each one of these bullet points, but you know, we do know that there are going to be direct payments going to folks making less than $75,000 a year, or couples making less than $150,000 a year. There is a reduced payment, I believe, for individuals making $80,000 or between 75 and 80, or couples making up between 150 and 160. The expanded unemployment aid now runs through September 6th, and we're anticipating that we will not see a break in that through the state. Colorado also received, or will receive, right around $2 billion for child care, K through 12, and higher education. Not quite clear yet, at least on my end, how that is going to be broken out and used. $4 billion will go to state government and $2 billion for Colorado counties and municipalities. Pickens County will receive approximately $3.4 million, and that is just to Pickens County. Municipalities will receive additional distributions out of this bill. We have a couple spreadsheets from a couple different offices that show slightly different amounts, but they're all within that $3.4 million range. There's an addition of $284 billion in funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, so there will be another round of that available, and there's also some targeting there for highly impacted restaurants, bars, venues, that sort of thing. Additional funding for food programs, including $3.6 billion for food banks. That will be split into payments to agriculture and such to get food into food banks, and then The Supplemental Nutritional Aid Program, SNAP, maximum benefit is increased by 15% through September 30th. And then there's an additional $800 million in the Women, Infant, Child Program. And then there's been a $5 billion pandemic electric benefit transfer program really aimed at child hunger. And so there's additional dollars there. We'll be getting more details how those are going to be coming down in TARS. And then there's $8 billion to support airports across the country. We will be getting clarity on how that will be targeted and if we'll benefit from that. So we did receive CARES Act funding distributions. I suspect our airport will receive some level of distribution out of those funds. And I may not have caught us up, but that's the end.
All right, questions for John? Steve?
John, I was visiting with Christine Giesel yesterday, and she mentioned Josh Vance's study of long haulers,
Yeah.
which I think is limited to people who tested positive for the virus. Now, there are a lot of people who caught the virus who didn't test positive or couldn't get tested. And I was just wondering, what is he using his study for? Would he be interested in adding more people to it who are long haulers who did not didn't test positive for the virus?
Yeah, so I think I need to, I haven't had that conversation with Josh, and I definitely don't want to play epidemiologist on that, but I'd be happy to have that conversation. I know it's something that we've been tracking to try and understand, the additional impacts to the community. Our sample size, partly because of our population, is low, and so I think I want to have that discussion with Josh to see if what expansion right now would do. But I can certainly pass that question along.
Yeah, and I think there's the anecdotal evidence that people who had the virus who then got vaccinated, long haulers who, had confirmed cases of the virus, got vaccinated, that their symptoms after getting vaccinated are going away or becoming much less, apparently due to the vaccine. That's just another parameter of something that he could be potentially studying. Mm-hmm. And that could actually change the vaccination strategy, because some people who had the virus are not wanting to get vaccinated, thinking it should go to someone else. And yet if someone is sick still, I think getting the vaccination probably will help them. So that's really the reason I want to try to help as many people and help our publicity on getting people vaccinated and getting more scientific information out there really to the public so they can make better decisions.
Patty?
Yeah, I was going to bring this up in open discussion, but I'm going to jump in now because it's appropriate. I got a thing from ACRA today about City of Aspen is going to be reconsidering their Aspen zone, their mask zone. They're going to talk about their city council meeting on Monday. ACRA's asking anybody to give ACRA input by Thursday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. I think the Board of Health has kind of been in the position, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, the position of let's follow what the state decides to do, and so maybe masks would apply there. Some ski resort areas are requiring masks until the end of the ski season. I'm a little more comfortable looking at longer term. Maybe till the end of the school year, possibly. I don't know where the state's going to land on this. So I just wanted to pull the rest of this board and see if you guys have any thoughts or anything you'd like me to send on to ACRA. ACRA's going to then present kind of an ACRA position at the city council meeting on Monday, or we can, as Board of Commissioners, present our own. And I don't know how they've weighed in with the Board of Health. Greg, I haven't heard anything directly from the city of Aspen. So I just wanted to bring it forward for this board to comment if they have any comments.
Yeah, all I can say is I haven't heard anything. That's kind of a surprise. You know, we all have our opinions on how we'd love it to go away, but at the end of the day, we kind of need to look to our public health director and our public health department to help us make the right decision, or to make the right decision. So I'm interested in hearing what they come up with, and I'm assuming they've been talking to our public health department, but I know nothing about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe I can add just a little bit more context here. So I think it's going to be coming up for both Aspen and Snowmass, and so if neither re-up their mask requirements, it would revert to the county's public health order, and there is still a masking requirement in the county's public health order that would apply within the municipalities. So I think that is the real question that the municipalities are asking is how necessary is it going forward. There are some differences. I think mainly that the county's mask rule in the public health order, outdoors, for example, requires masks if you can't maintain the 6 foot of distancing with people outside your household. And so it becomes pretty obvious on the mall, for example, but maybe less obvious in some other places in the core if you're in Aspen, or likewise in Snowmass. But even if they remove their mask zones in Aspen, Snowmass, the masking requirement in the county's public health order isn't impacted by that. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, well, it does, except for the fact when it comes to enforcement, one of the reasons I think Snowmass and Aspen did it was much easier to enforce if everybody within the core areas or the village area in Snowmass had to wear a mask. We've been seeing violations really in the downtown core. There was some data in here that it's people are wearing masks at the airport because it's federal and required, but also people are not wearing them as best they could be in the downtown city of Aspen core. That's being noted by people passing by the visitor center kiosk, that there more and more people are just not wearing them. So I think if there's anything we can do in this next phase of the virus, it's to ensure that people are wearing a mask. And I think the easiest way for enforcement is if it's mandated in the downtown core areas where people tend to congregate and be in closer proximity to people they don't know. So that's what my position would be, to encourage the city of Aspen to continue it and reevaluate at the end of the season, or preferably at the end of the school year, when people really will be out and about more, literally because the weather will have changed. Hopefully by then we'll have nice sunny days. So I don't know if the board would like me to present that to ACRA, that, and we understand that the public health order will still have an effect, but for enforcement purposes, it makes better sense for these downtown core areas to have a mandate, at least through the season or possibly through the end of the school year. Is that okay with this board if I send that back to ACRA?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I will say, I do think that the signs that the city has up all around where that's a mandatory mask zone are actually really helpful cues for folks. So, the enforcement problem gets worse if those signs go away, I think.
Yeah.
So thanks, Patty. And I just too would like to, a mask isn't a punishment. We're not, I think we need to you're taking care of each other. I hope masks continue on in the future when people are feeling ill to protect each other. So I do hesitate that they're being regarded as a punishment when it's really just being asked to take care of each other. So, and then I saw Francie and then Greg.
I think that through the end of the ski season makes sense, because the ski season necessarily ends up with people close to each other outside. But I think trying to make a prognostication until June might be a little bit, might be received somewhat annoyingly, because if things change drastically, as we hope they will, as the vaccines are distributed, hopefully we'll get some more. We don't know where we're going to be in June, so I would definitely support passing it on to ACRA, that we would support the mask mandate through the ski season. But I don't think I'd put the end of the school year out there.
I want to just contrary that a little bit, because I think the Public Health Department has requested that they go through the end of the school year. And so that's helpful to know where that comes from. And I also just want to point out, last fall, you know, when our main tourist season and our peak tourist season ended, our community rates started to go really high. So we still have a community here that, you know, where our rates skyrocketed even after the tourists had left. So tying it to the end of the ski season doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. Anyway, so Greg, go ahead.
You know, I guess my concern is that regardless of what change is advocated for and made, there needs to be a concerted and invigorated public messaging effort. As Kelly says, the signs really were helpful and are helpful. I see, I'm going to say 99% compliance on the ski hills and the lift lines. When somebody has a mask off, usually somebody near them will remind them to put it up. But the ski company has their signs everywhere, and the signs in Aspen, I think, are good as well. If they decide they want to relax that, I think it needs to come part and parcel with a real public outreach campaign to put it back on people to take the personal responsibility to wear a mask when they're in proximity to anyone. And I don't know where to come down between end of the ski season or the end of summer. I think I'll leave it to the science people to figure that one out. But I think it'd be great if Patty went back with, you know, the message that, you know, we still need to take this very seriously.
I can leave the end date either till the end of the ski season or based on, you know, more input to the end of the school year.
I just don't, why would we
I'm
relax
fine with
it?
that.
But my question is, why would we relax it before we have herd immunity? You know, why would we take away a basic protection before our community is actually protected? And we're not there yet, you know. So, Steve, go ahead.
I think it should be tied to our metrics. If we're in the green zone or if we're in the blue, I don't even know what those low numbers are. We haven't even been there, but whatever the low ones are, if we're in there for a week or two, that's when we should consider loosening the mask rules, but not, I don't think before that.
So I guess the basis of my comments to ACRA will be that the Board of County Commissioners supports continuing with masks mandated, especially in the downtown core areas because of the proximity of people, and we can discuss further a date to be determined.
That sounds good. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
That sounds perfect to me.
Okay.
And as we close this out, I would note that the state has indicated that there will be a dial 3.0. I think that could be announced as soon as Monday next week, I think is the timing that we're hearing, which will probably include some kind of loosening and then potentially another indication of change after that, with maybe an unwinding of the dials. So we're going to be watching that closely, and hopefully we'll have more information for you next week.
All right. We have
Hopefully it'll be
run.
better news.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Saying hopefully it'll be better.
I'm with you, Francie. I am with you. How about we take a few minute break? 5 minutes, does that work, folks? And then we'll come back and we'll do our roundtable and open discussion.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll be back at 3:12. Thanks, Grassroots. We'll be back in a few minutes. I just, I know, for some reason, I'm tight today. I don't know why. No, I'm just, we're gonna be in this position for this. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, March 16th. We're getting towards the latter part of our agenda and moving on to open discussion with the board. John Peacock, do you have any open discussion items for us, please?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I was asked to give the board an update on the airport director recruitment. So I might just run you through a little bit of history here, where we've been, where we're going. I have Rich Engelhardt here, who's been involved in it also, so that hopefully between the two of us, we can answer any questions that you might have. So just to bring the board back, it's already been since August of 2020 that our airport director announced retirement. At that time, we had made the decision, Rich was appointed as the interim airport director, and we wanted to take a little bit of time, let Rich spend some time at the airport to identify kind of needs and you know, what we were looking for in terms of a candidate profile. And so in November of 2020, we engaged an executive search firm. These are pretty specialized positions, and when we have these types of specialized positions, we'll oftentimes engage a search firm to help us really identify and recruit candidates. In this case, we engaged Aviation Career Services, or ACS. They're a nationwide firm, and they really specialize in airport management recruitments. And that group really spent a couple of months advertising and beating the bushes. The job was advertised with the Airports Council International North American Division, the Association of Airport Executives, the Airport Minority Advisory Council. Of course, it was posted on the county webpage, and it also went out through a number of social media platforms on the web, Twitter, Facebook. ACS has over 8,000 professional contacts that it maintains, that the job was sent out to and noticed to. There were a number of applications. Out of those, ACS identified 34 qualified applicants that we had them go through a screening process to bring us, we wanted 6 to 10 semifinalists to interview based on the candidate profile. And I will say ACS spent a lot of time with us understanding not just the job description, but us as an organization, what we were looking for kind of in terms of fit and culture, getting to know us a little bit, that the director would be working directly with. And so they used that both quantitative and qualitative information to screen down to, it turned out to be 6 semifinalists that came to us that were ultimately reviewed with staff from ACF, Rich, and myself. And right now, we're down to 2 finalists who are coming here. We had identified 3. One did drop out prior to the announcement of finalists being made. In terms of the process that's coming up, I will say we've had a little bit of a compressed timeline, partly because we've been trying to figure out how to do everything we want to do with COVID restrictions and what COVID restrictions we're going to be operating under, and aligning everyone's schedule, including our candidates for a visit. What we do have scheduled for this week in terms of the candidate interview, and these are all going to happen in slightly different orders for the candidates. They'll give you a flavor of the process that all of them will go through. We have an interview opportunity with ASE Vision Committee members. That is going to be moderated by Meg Haynes and Jackie Francis. John Bennett was also invited. He's unfortunately out of town, so we're going to have our 3 leaders of the Vision Committee moderate, but Jackie and Meg were agreeable to that. Other folks from the Vision Committee have been invited to join by Zoom. They'll be able to ask questions and such in the chat. We are going to have that moderated with our staff, because sometimes folks want to ask questions we're just not allowed to ask in the public sector, so we want to make sure we're keeping the process clear there. We'll be collecting feedback from the Vision Committee members that participate in that process. Hopefully you all have gotten signed up with Charlotte. If you're available, we have a meet and greet opportunity for board members. And then with a certain number of Vision Committee work group members, the number of slots is limited for the in-person because of our COVID restrictions. And so those will be on a first come, first served basis. Rich, I don't know if you know how we're doing on filling those slots, but maybe I'll cue you up to answer that here in a second. Both candidates will also be going through an interview with our executive team. So that's what we call the E-team, our section leaders and department heads. I will not be attending that meeting. I really want the E-team members to be able to, ask questions and evaluate the candidate. And really what we're looking for with all of these is feedback from the organization, the community, you as board members, about fit. Both of these candidates are really qualified. That's not where we're at in the process now. It's about fit with the community and fit with the organization, and that's really what we're looking at. There will be a lunch opportunity for the candidates, again, more of an informal opportunity to meet with airport staff. We'll be collecting feedback from that group based on the lunch. And then there's going to be a final interview that Rich and I will conduct with each candidate. In addition, the candidates will have tours of the airport facilities with Caroline and Matt. I'm sorry, I missed a capital M in there. We'll have a tour of rental units that the county currently has available. And then we'll be having the candidates also meet with Sally Sheikman and get a sense of, the real estate market, cost of living, and that sort of thing. Before making a decision on a candidate, we're going to be reviewing input that we receive. There will be email addresses. I think Jeff has given those out to folks who are registering, Jeff Hembry from our Human Resources Department, to collect comments and observations. Similarly, I'll be reaching out to all of you who have a chance to meet the candidates to get feedback. And really we'll look for patterns of comments, things that folks really liked or concerns that may emerge from these different interview panels, and weigh those in with what we're seeing in our interviews to try and select a candidate. So that's where we're at in the process right now.
Okay. And I just want to note, John, I'm not sure if you had thought you were sharing your screen or planning to share your screen, or if there was anything you wanted us to be looking at.
I could share it. Yeah, I could have done that.
I mean, I think we were all listening intently, but since you were like, oh, I forgot to, capitalize that, I was like, well, we don't see anything anyway. So.
Yeah, I thought I was. I thought you were seeing slides.
No.
I hope I wasn't picking my teeth or something during the.
No, all was above board.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, so if there is anything important that you want to flash up on the screen, you're invited to, obviously. But let's go ahead to questions for John about the process, where we're at, concerns, anything. Greg.
Great, thanks, John. I think that the thing that pops into my mind when we start talking about this is just and I think you're the one who brought it up, or Rich did, that these are two different jobs. We need somebody to build an airport, but we also need someone to manage an airport. And is that the same person? How are you feeling, with that in mind?
Yeah, so I think both of these candidates have a lot of strength that I'm seeing in terms of community outreach and planning and that sort of thing in their backgrounds. And so I think we'll be leaning internally on operations. One of the things, frankly, Rich and I have talked about is let's get a qualified candidate with the right fit, and then we may be able to reorganize some of the responsibilities, frankly, within our office, with what Rich is doing and such, to cover, whether it's operational or project-oriented. As you know, Rich has overseen a lot of projects for us coming up, and so I think what we want to see is where the strengths of the candidates are, what the right fit is, which is so important for this community, and then come back with what we do organizationally. Because I think you're right, Greg. It's really hard to find someone that can probably do both really well here over the next 5 to 7 years.
Well, could I ask also, just if these two don't work out, what happens? Like, is there we go back to the search committee, the companies, the headhunters again, or
Yeah, we would have to go back out again. I think we were very selective and very clear that we really only wanted to bring candidates in that we felt would be a good match. We think we had 3 out of this group, and one has dropped out. So if for some reason, which I'm not anticipating, I'm really excited about the candidates we've been able to attract. But as we know, it's about fit, and it's about them wanting to be here too. This takes a special commitment to come to our valley for an individual or a family. And so, yeah, Greg, if so, I'm afraid I'm going to need to bring Rich out to Aspen Tap or something and try and strong arm him into staying at the airport a little longer.
Steve and then Francie.
So I want to find out more details about the in-person interview process. For instance, I got a 2:30 time slot for 15 minutes. Well, how many other people will be there at that time? I presume both candidates will be there, so I could spend some time with one and one time with the other. But then is it more of a small group of people will be there asking them questions and meeting, or how many people are we allowing in the room at one time?
Rich, do you have that detail?
Yeah, I can give you some of that, Steve. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager, and again, thank you, Board, for the opportunity not only to serve at the airport, to be a part of this. It's exciting. This is an exciting time for all of us. But right now, it looks like we have 13 that are signed up. I don't have the specific slots, but I think, Steve, to answer your question, it's probably more of just a real informal, kind of a little bit of a group setting. People would be asking questions among those that are there. and it is a 15-minute. It's just going to be a kind of a quick meet, and it's a gut feel more than anything. But it gives you an opportunity to see them face to face and how they interact with others. So just observation can say a lot about a person. So
Is that 15 minutes per candidate or 15 minutes total?
And I think you'll have some time that can overlap there, frankly.
Yeah.
We're just trying to create some windows so that we're moving folks through. But the board, as a board member, we want you to spend some time, but we may be moving the community members through to meet the COVID restrictions.
yeah, and I think that's the goal, is just to make sure that we're not overloading. If we only have a certain amount, we could let it go for as long as it needs to. So we'll kind of play that by ear.
Will everybody be together? Will both candidates be in the same room?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is interesting. It's kind of they call these assessment centers. There's kind of different ways of doing interview processes. So when they do the community interview, they're both going to be in the same room together, and they're going to alternate. Jackie and Meg will alternate questions between the two. So they're going to be giving answers in the room with each other. Wow. So it's a chance to see how they play off each other. It's not uncommon to do something like this, but we're looking forward to that.
We do it both ways, Francie. It presents a really different kind of interview environment. You get a sense of how you navigate a stressful or delicate situation.
Yeah.
Steve, I interrupted your questions. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I just am remembering when we had the three candidates there in the cafe at the airport, and they had, there were wives, at least one or two wives, I think, were there. We got to meet more of the family. So will they have family members with them? Have they been vaccinated? Will everybody be wearing masks? I have lots of these details.
Yeah,
I want to know what I'm getting into here.
Everyone will be wearing masks. Not everyone will be vaccinated. And it will not be family members because of the COVID restrictions. We love it when we can, because they're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them, right, at the end of the day. And so we'd love it if we could do it that way, but it's just not practical with COVID restrictions.
Francie.
So I'm just trying to get a sense of planning my time that day. So if I'm on at 3, probably won't be there with Steve, or will be, or I can't really picture it yet. So we walk into a room, and is it an informal cocktail party kind of setting, or do we ask formal questions?
It's an informal setting without the cocktails.
It's like, I got it. I know what it is. It's speed dating followed by squirm night.
Exactly. That's perfect.
Without the cocktail.
So should we prepare questions, and then we just, or is it just conversations?
You're getting to know them. It's just conversation. It's not a formal interview in this case, so it's for you to get a chance to, talk to them about their, interest in the area, tell them a little bit about yourself. This is an opportunity to more informally, qualitatively see fit.
Okay, and so if I'm overstaying my welcome, Rich will, kind of like Andrew Cuomo, put his hand on my back and lead me out the door.
Not the Andrew Cuomo. There's a hook and a gong if you really don't listen.
You'll be very delicate, I can tell you, Francie, for sure.
It'll be just a little nod and a wink, like, okay, your time's up. Get out.
Sorry. I do have another question.
If I could jump in really quickly, I'm going to wear my official name tag for their benefit, so they can identify me as my first name, and I'm a commissioner. I think that would be good probably for all of us. You'll probably have name tags for everybody to put on, but I think we want to make this as professional as possible as we can.
Good idea.
So I
Otherwise-
can't be there, so I am curious to know if a majority of the board will be able to attend, because I have a long-standing meeting that only happens occasionally and I can't miss it. I do want to check in. What is the community invitation process looking like? How many of our ASC Vision reps are available to participate in this? And I'm sure I'll have more questions, but those are my two.
Well, we did send it out to 126, I believe. It's kind of our count of our applicants or our working members, and then also the Vision Committee itself. There is a reservation system. They do have to put in their passcode. It's similar to the way you conduct your meetings whenever you're having kind of public hearings. I don't know what those reservations are looking like. I'm not sure we will until that night, Kelly, how many will actually participate, but we are getting some feedback. People are interested to participate. They're kind of having to choose between one or the other unless they can make both. If they can come in early, the meet and greet, see them personally, and then beat it home or wherever they need to get to a computer to do the Zoom, because we are clearing the room at 4 o'clock. It's going to clear out. You have a half an hour to reset up, and the only people in the room that's going to be conducting the interview is going to be Meg and Jackie, and John and I will certainly be in the room, and some IT staff, and that's it. And the candidates and the two candidates.
Starting at 5, you said?
I believe at 4:30 that starts. And goes till 6:30. So it's a long day for them. I mean, we started at 8:30 with airport tours and end at 6:30 that evening.
It'll be the shortest of their days if they get the job. Is it inappropriate to ask what the salary range is for this position?
It's public information, and it is, give me just a second. I've got to look it up.
Thank you.
While you're looking for that, could I ask regarding questions of the candidates for Jackie and Meg to ask? Do we get to submit questions? How does that work?
Sure. I mean, Greg, if you have some you'd like for them to consider, if you could send those to myself. We have a list of 16 to 18 that we've submitted already for them to take a look at, but we'd be happy to submit some. If you as a board have some, just if you can do it right away, because we're sorting through those now. But that would be, if you want to offer some, we'd be happy to do that.
I'd also love to encourage, if the time is permits, a tour of the airport's great, certainly necessary for them, but I also think to give them an overview of the valley and the community and something about our history would be pretty valuable, just so they know what culture they're stepping into.
Yeah. And John had mentioned earlier, we have them lined up to take them around to the houses that we have available, because our thought is to try to ease into the lifestyle here and the cost of living, is that we would look at any of the, I think we have 3 houses available that we own right now that we have not, we've kind of held off. We had to do some work on. In fact, we're closing on one of them on Thursday. So is seeing if we could put them in there on a temporary basis, rent that to them during that period of time while they get acclimated, and then kind of look for housing on a more permanent basis. So they'll be set up with Sally Sheikman at some point in time, and she does a really nice job of kind of explaining our valley and the attributes it has, and kind of talks about the culture with them as well.
And Francie, the position was posted with a range between 142, 680 up to 174 annually.
Okay. And then I have a question. So, I don't know, what are you two thinking about when you ultimately are going to synthesize all this information that you get in selecting a hire?
Well, it's a little bit more art than science, I think, in that case. But Kelly, we'll be looking for whether there's agreement. Sometimes it becomes really clear in a process when internal group, the policy group, the airport staff, if they're all in agreement on a candidate, it's probably a pretty good bet that that's the right fit for the organization. It becomes a little bit more difficult if there's a lot of split, either within groups or between groups. And then we're looking for patterns about what are we seeing in the comments? Are there additional items that we need to explore with a candidate? Was there either maybe it's a misunderstanding, but what we're looking for ideally is some consensus among the different layers and through these different approaches, because we're putting the candidates through a lot of different formal interviews, really informal settings, something in between that can bring into sharp relief different qualities that the candidates have, either in their interpersonal skills or and also exploring, to some degree, their technical skills. So hopefully we're finding consensus. If not, we're looking for patterns and exploring those just to make sure we vetted the candidates as thoroughly as possible.
And ordinarily, like in a hiring process of this at this level, there's been some concern that there's no airport advisory board to inform the process. I imagine people who might be on that board or have opportunities to participate in this process anyway. But just in general, what role do our citizen boards play at a director level hire? Do they play any role at all, ever? Would they be invited to participate in a meet and greet similarly to like the one that's being conducted here? I just want to kind of keep that in mind of like what this looks like across the organization.
Yeah, this is probably, use my recruitment for example. The board at that time assembled a much smaller group of stakeholders to participate in the interview process. Patty, I think you're the only one left who was part of that interview process. However, for example, if we were recruiting a community development director, would we provide some opportunities for input for P&Z? Yes. Open space and trails? Yes. And so I think we don't have that airport advisory committee yet, but I do think that we did a lot of work over the last year with the ASE Vision Committee and involving that group who invested so much time in making the recommendations to the board, but really also understanding the airport made a lot of sense as a proxy until that airport advisory board is in place.
Mm-hmm. But see, John, I don't remember when we hired Dale Will, I don't remember us bringing in Open Space and Trails Board. I remember the BOCC interviews, but I don't remember that. We haven't hired anybody in ComDev for 30 years, so.
And that was well before, that's kind of my style, Patty.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That's not necessarily how it's been done. I think to provide that, my concern is about fit. And so getting kind of the, intuition of the board through some informal conversations around fit, I think is really helpful.
Well, I think when it comes to the airport director and what we have going on at the airport, I think it is very appropriate, especially to bring in, because the whole process is being community driven, and I think it's truly appropriate in this case to be doing it this way. I just want to be in the room watching Steve and Francie at this cocktail party and see how they behave.
Have you communicated any timelines to the candidates about a decision or offer?
No, I'll do that during the interview process.
Okay.
And we would try and make a decision, whether we're going to be making an offer fairly quickly. I would say usually we try and get that done within a week.
Well, and how
I
does...
think you said how it, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess I'm just wondering, so what should our board, what avenues should we be thinking about in providing our feedback to you?
Directly to me, either email or phone call.
Quickly.
You all are a high priority.
I'm just sort of,
Quickly.
I guess I just want to set the
frankly,
expectation. If any of our board is like,
No,
we don't
thank
like
you,
either of
Kathy.
these people, let's, we should communicate that quickly and not wait for another open discussion or something like that.
And ideally, so I'll be interviewing, Rich and I will be interviewing both candidates the next day. And so, ideally, if you're having concerns after the meet and greet, getting those, so I can explore them. Because I either need to come back and say, oh, here's what I learned. Or, be able to explore that and say, oh yeah, that is that's a issue. Or maybe something that you think is great, that you want us to explore a little bit more and flesh out.
Okay.
So yes, thank you.
Yeah.
The sooner the better.
Remind us of that at the meet and greet, that you need to turn it around so we don't forget, because it's like the next day.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's
Well,
important
and
too
it's
for
ver-
Jeff to communicate to any of the public members of the public who have signed up to attend these things,
Yep.
that if, that their window, then that we want their window to be short or not, if we need to accommodate more time for that input. But I do think that's very important for us to be communicating right up front with anyone who's signing up to take part in this. So, thanks.
Kelly, we did mention to the group in the email that the end of business day on Friday was the absolute deadline. So that gives a little bit of feedback. John's got a little more time to think after he gets some of that as well. But from the board, to John's point, the sooner the better certainly helps.
Okay.
And I'll sleep on this decision definitely a few nights. Before that.
Francie? Yep.
I think you explained this early on, John, but so there's not actually a hiring board. The hiring entity is you.
Correct. That's under the charter. That's how our charter is constructed, Francie. So the Board of Commissioners hires two positions, mine and John. You've hired two Johns at the end of the day.
How about that?
I know. And then it's either employees that are hired by the elected executive positions, like the sheriff or clerk and recorder, or departments that fall under me. And so the opening up is really about helping us just make a good decision as an organization.
That's a lot of weight on your shoulders. That's a
I'll
big
blame
job.
Rich if it goes bad. Just kidding.
But you'll be right there with him, right, Rich?
I will be right there with him.
Steve?
So I remember the day when the airport director was always someone who lived here locally. Those were the only people applying for the position.
Oh, no.
And I don't know who made the decision, but, it was a limited number of people who probably knew something about aviation and ended up being hired as the airport director. So we have come a long way since those days.
And I think we sent the candidate profiles out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I think you can see we've attracted some really qualified candidates.
So I do have an open discussion.
Okay. So my apologies. I've let us go over time. We're supposed to be adjourning and we have more to cover here. So I guess my final question on this topic, was the job solicitation included in the candidate info you guys sent around? I haven't looked at it yet.
Job description is in there.
No, okay, thanks, Patty. Patty has done her homework.
It's very lengthy.
So are there any other questions on this item? I think there's other open discussion for us to discuss. No. Okay. So you will see at least a majority of the board at the meet and greets. I will do my best to tune into the Zoom interview. It's just Thursday is not a great day. Francie, did you have another
I just have one question. Where is the AOC?
And what does it stand for, right? It's another acronym.
And I already asked Charlotte what it stood for.
Oh, okay. It is on Owl Creek Road. So if you go up Highway 82 and take a right off of Owl Creek, it's the really the maintenance building on that west side of the airport.
On the right side of Owl Creek as you're going up.
Right, turn right at Buttermilk and head up and you can't miss it.
Before it makes that sharp turn
thanks.
uphill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Francie, as far as we know, while it's named after a certain congressman, I don't think she's even ever been here. It's baffling to me.
Yeah.
Who's it named after?
He's being
Yes,
facetious.
you can't come to Aspen on waitress salaries, so there you go. All right, let's move on. Another open discussion, please. John, do you have any? Patty has something, I have something. Okay, Patty, go ahead.
This one's really quick. I've been brought in finally with the Northwest COG Early Childhood Education Study. It's actually, the final report came out with my name on it, even though they failed to involve me in the report. So I called them up and said, how come I was never involved? So I went to the first meeting last week. It was actually great. I'm now, Francie, I left you a copy on your desk if anybody else wants one. Kelly, I left one. It's a 60-page report. I sent it off to Michael Bennett's office because during his campaign he was interested in child care issues. And on Friday morning I have a meeting with a Zoom meeting or WebEx or whatever those other ones are with the new staff persons for Senator Hickenlooper's office. One is in Grand Junction and one is in Glenwood Springs. So we will have a very local contact. So I will, after I meet with them, I'll get you guys all their contact information and let you know what I think. We're going to talk about various issues, but pretty focused on the child care, early childhood education report. I'm also going to send a copy, I'm not sure who to send it to, with our Congresswoman's office in Grand Junction to be politically correct, and just let them know that we have been working on this on a regional level.
All right, any questions for Patty? Okay. Any other items for open discussion? I have one if no one else does. All right. The city of Aspen has asked us to join in on a joint letter regarding some legislation that Kara reached out to me on. One of the bills has to, let me find it. Sorry. One of the bills has to do with energy cooperatives that we are supporting via CC4CA, of which both our jurisdictions are members, so that's pretty straightforward. The other one has not been taken up by any of our advocacy groups so far, so I wanted to check in with you all and see if you've heard anything, especially Greg or Patty, related to the Board of Health. This one has to do with mental health and suicide prevention. And so it is attempting to update the state's programming related to suicide prevention and looking at how first and last responders, educators, students interact and provide services to people related to any thoughts of suicide, attempted suicide, etc. This is being sponsored by Carrie Donovan as a senator, Don Corum, who's over, I think, in Delta County, and two others who I don't know, Representatives Janice Rich and Lindsay Dougherty. And the city's asking for our support on this as well. So I just wanted to check in. I think generally these are programs that we support and would continue to support. It's just updating current state programming related to it. So any concerns there? Patty?
No, I know that the Board of Health is looking at, as we wind down COVID and wind back up the things we were supposed to be attending to over this last year and a half, we're going to be looking at more mental health issues, which of course includes our issues with suicide. So I think it might be perfect timing for us to jump on board with this with the city. Greg, you can chime in on that, but I think that's kind of the focus we're looking at with Board of Health during the, during 2021.
What Patty said, I think this is House Bill 1119.
Exactly.
211119, right. I think clearly that's what's come to the surface. Once you look past COVID, that seems to be front and center, and Board of Health will certainly get behind it, and I think we should too. If we can sign on to a letter or something, why wouldn't we?
Okay. And just to sort of look at these details a little more, it's expanding the duties of the current state suicide prevention commission to include training and education for a variety of folks, as well as follow-up care plans, which I think closes a gap in services that are currently required.
Perfect.
Okay.
Right, and we talk about, and Board of Health is already talking about that, and putting mental health first aid, for instance, deeper into the community, and resuming what we started pre-COVID regarding the trainings in the schools and youth center and elsewhere, adult and child mental health first aid programming. So hopefully that's a big part of it, and we can pick up where we left off.
All right, well, thanks for your support. That's all I had for open discussion. Anything else? Okay, I want to check in. We are over time. We still have one agenda item to do our roundtable updates for the various boards we're appointed to. Does the board continue to have time available for that conversation, or do you prefer to reschedule? I have time. Greg?
I was just going to say, looking at my list, I don't have any big reports to make. A lot of these meetings with these various groups are just coming up. We're kind of, in advance of them. So if we put this off a week or two, I don't think it would be a problem.
Okay, and it usually comes back around on our agendas, right? Patty?
Yeah, I'm in the same position as Greg is. Most of these things, I have meetings coming up next week and the week following. So yeah, I will be better informed to inform you at a later date.
Okay. Francie stepped away. Steve?
So I just want to give one bill report on CCI. What they say is probably the biggest, most important bill before the legislature this session is the transportation funding bill, which has bipartisan support, both Senate and House. It is they're looking at a package of fees which would pay for the funding of the gas tax, electric vehicle fee, fees on rental cars, ride-sharing services, Amazon deliveries, and food deliveries are things that are mentioned. I don't know if there are others. So this bill, they've been working on it very hard and kind of vetting it across the state. I don't think the bill hasn't been introduced yet, but that will be coming. So we'll get another shot at trying to get a good transportation funding bill passed this year by the legislature. And the money, both CCI and CML are advocating to share the revenue according to the HUTF funding mechanism, where the county, state, and municipalities share a certain proportion of the funding. So more to come on that, but looking forward to seeing where that goes.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And yeah, CCAT has a lot of action. Everything is sort of in the flux period of moving through committees, I would say. So I don't have a ton to report there, but I do want to just give a quick report on APSHA. Francie and Francie, I don't know if you're able to attend tomorrow, but I will be there.
Am.
Okay.
I'll be there.
So APSHA is holding a public hearing tomorrow on some regulation updates, that most of which are cleanup items. But there is a couple of things that I did want to just bring to your attention. So one of them, and you may hear this, Greg, in Woody Creek, is APSHA 2 years ago made the decision to get rid of categories 6 and 7 and collapse all of that into a category 5, and this was never sort of cleaned up in the regulations. If on pure glance, if you own a category 6 or 7, you may think that you're now reduced in resale value, since you're getting lowered to a category 5, when really what is happening is that the values for category 5 have just increased to include 6 and 7. And the reason that this was done was to align the number of categories between rental units and sale units. So now that there's 5 and 5, whereas there was 5 and 7, and then RO, and it was confusing. So I just want to put that out. An additional update too is related to policies that the APSHA staff have used over time operationally, but were advised legally to include in the regulatory process. And so, for example, they maintain what's called an ineligibility list. So individuals who have interacted with the APSHA inventory in one way or another over time through a variety of violations can get put onto this ineligibility list, which prevents them from being able to access APSHA housing, into the future. Now, my understanding from staff is that this list is used very, very sparingly and only in incredibly egregious circumstances. One example was some kids who had a pig roast in Maroldt and burnt a hole through to the unit below them were then put on to the ineligibility list for egregious violation of their role as tenants and damage to buildings, et cetera, et cetera. And, this can also apply to folks who own, who are forced to sell their units for, repeat violations that are all adjudicated through the variety of processes that APSHA has. And which now include that fee and fine schedule. So if you work your way all the way through the violation schedule, you can be put on the ineligibility list. It additionally includes some language about how you might cure yourself to get off that list and demonstrate to staff and a hearing officer what you have done to make yourself, a prospective candidate for housing.
You only promised to roast a chicken, not a pig.
So I did want to bring that to your attention. This is a process that they have used operationally over time, but is now moving into the regulations. And they've, advertised this, and this has been publicly noticed as a public hearing. So I did want to bring that to your attention. Is there any questions or concerns about that item right now? Patty?
Is there a time frame? I mean, you're ineligible for the rest of your life if you're 18 and you do something really stupid like roast a pig on the floor in your living room. Hopefully by the age of 5 years down the line or whatever, you've matured enough. There's no timeline, but there is the ability to cure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a timeline. It says a person may request to be removed from the list, and it shall be addressed and be determined by the hearing officer.
Okay.
And then it provides criteria for the hearing officer to consider.
So there's a process. Yeah, I just didn't want it to be in perpetuity without a way to right your wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then additionally, Francie and I were having a conversation the other day that I think is worthy of bringing up here, and then again at APSHA, related to ongoing criteria for eligibility given COVID. So ordinarily, APSHA requires that every 2 years you reprove your eligibility to remain in APSHA housing based on meeting the 1,500 hours of work requirement, in Pickens County. And, it's likely that there are circumstances where folks either were really sick from COVID or lost employment due to COVID that may affect their eligibility to retain their housing. And, I just wanted to check in with you all before bringing it forward to APSHA that perhaps we should have some sort of conversation on, flexibility regarding that or a waiver of that or something. And so I wanted to just see how you all felt related to I don't know what examples there might be out there or circumstances, and if we have to if we just generally do some sort of blanket thing or if we look more specifically at criteria. But I did want to talk about that. Patty?
Yeah, I definitely think we need to look at it. I don't think it would be fair to ask people, hit them when they're down. I'm sorry you lost your job, now you're gonna lose your house because you weren't able to work. Yeah, because of COVID, for whatever reason, if it's COVID related. I think we need to look at a way to address it fairly. And I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Steve?
Absolutely, there should be special considerations given for the pandemic-related situations that were beyond the control of the people. That's the only human and humane thing to do.
Francie?
I agree, and I do have a friend who hasn't been able to work now for 3 months because of COVID, and she probably won't meet the actual requirements of 1,500 hours. But what about somebody who has a heart attack and can't work, or gets cancer and can't work? I mean, should we come up with something that forgives all loss of work due to health reasons? And is that, I mean, I think we should, but I'm just wondering, is it just COVID, or give preference to people who have suffered from COVID over other illnesses and so on?
I think that should be brought into the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know what the criteria are now if staff runs into that situation, but I think it's a good topic to bring up. All right, we'll report back and with that. Yes, Francie.
I did speak with Zane Kessler at the Conservation District, and he was going to send me a list of things that he wanted to discuss at a meeting that he requested. I haven't gotten that email yet, but he also wanted to, he was also going to send me some things to report on to you, so I will do that at the next opportunity.
Great.
And I did attend the agriculture and the public lands and the land use meetings of the CCI, and I just want to draw your attention to this one initiative that is not going to be voted on for a while because it's not a bill yet, but it has to do with animal protection. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but it's pretty out there, and none of the 64 commissioners at the meeting were in support of it, but it will be coming back around, and it has to do with not being able to butcher an animal until it's lived half its life, and having animals have normal sex lives so there's no artificial insemination. You can't spay your dog or cat, and some things like that. It's a pretty extreme approach to animal protection in terms of agriculture. So that was sort of the last thing on the agenda that got everybody riled up, but there are some other things too, and let me put together something that's a little more prepared to pass on to you guys.
That's a really interesting thought.
Isn't that something?
Okay. Anything else?
I'm going to consult my pets on that one.
Well, all the counties were like shocked, especially the rural counties.
All right, any other items for roundtable? We'll have more to report.
I have to ask, what county did that come out of? Do you know, is there a specific
There's
county?
one person who proposed it, and I don't know where it came from. It was at the legislature level, but wasn't exactly clear because the reaction was so strong and from so many people that we didn't really go back to the origination.
Okay. If you hear anything, let me know.
Greg.
Hey, Kelly, the one thing I heard, and you've probably seen this headline also, is that there are some counties who are creating sanctuaries for wolf predation in reaction to the wolf reintroduction bill. And the language was pretty convoluted. It said, while we support the will of the constituency and the voters, we've decided we're going to do what we want to do in our county, and we're going to, we're going to create a sanctuary for wolf trappers, I guess, or something. I wasn't quite sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sanctuary for no wolves.
A sanctuary for no wolves to exist. And then the other thing is we came up also, and happily not taking a stand on, of course, is either it's pro beef or against beef day. I just soon, pass on that one.
Saturday, eat beef if you want, don't if you don't. Steve, go ahead.
Only if it's
So
lived half
on
its life.
the Ag, Wildlife, and Rural Affairs Committee, to end on a high note, there is one really good bill, which is Agricultural Soil Health Program, that people have been working on it, I don't know, CCAT or CC4CA. People have been working on that for about 3 years, and it's finally now a numbered bill. And I think it's a really good one that has CCI support. So that's one really good one in the Ag department to counter Francie's really bad one.
Francie.
I just want to let you guys know I applied to be on the SAG, which is like a advisory board to the wolf introduction group. It's a pretty long application, and I filled it out and sent it in, just so you guys know. And when they said, what is your experience with wolf reintroduction programs and wolf management? I said, well, I don't have any experience with wolf management, but I have taught about niche and habitat and predator-prey relationships, that kind of thing, for a long time. So I think it's a long shot, but it's something I'm super interested in being involved with, so I just thought I'd let you guys know.
So Francie, too, Dan Gibbs used to be a Summit County Commissioner. And before that, he worked in Senator Mark Udall's office and Congressman Mark Udall's office. So he's the director of natural resources for the state, who's in charge of the wolf reintroduction. He's a great guy.
Oh, cool.
All right. Greg.
Can I add something very, very briefly on wolves? Sorry, just regarding the wolf. If you ask around, I know people in the community who swear they've seen wolves in the Maroon Creek Valley on more than one occasion, and another friend is certain that he came across a wolf that had been put down by wildlife guys maybe 15 years ago up in the Independence region of our valley. And when he asked them what they were up to, they chased him off. And so we don't really have, and I've never followed it up. I've never tried to find out from Kevin Wright or anybody, but we do have people in the valley who are certain that wolves are here and have been here, albeit quite rare. I've certainly never seen one. But it's just interesting to contemplate that, maybe they're not as far away as, it's possible that the one that on Independence Pass was an escaped hybrid, for instance. Don't know, but then another friend who's in the Maroon Creek Valley is certain he's seen him once or twice.
Francie.
The letter about the sanctuary also mentioned that there were only 5 counties on the western slope that approved a wolf reintroduction: Pitkin, San Miguel, Summit, San Juan, and I forget the other one. So I think sort of the gist of that letter about the sanctuary counties is to sort of say, just introduce them in those 5 counties.
Or in Denver.
Or Denver, yeah.
Okay, any other roundtable? We've sort of merged back to open discussion. All right. Okay, folks, well, thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and many of you will connect later this week. Thanks. All right, thank you, Grassroots.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Ted.